Ocean and Obedience. The bookstore smelled like old paper and spilled espresso. Daniel wasn't supposed to be there. He was meant to be in a lecture hall, taking notes on economic theory, being the dutiful son his parents had shipped off to Paris to become. But the professor's droning voice had bled into the hum of the radiator until Daniel couldn't take it anymore. He'd slipped out, hands shoved in his coat pockets, breath fogging in the winter air. And then he heard her. Non, c'est ridicule. Vous le vendez 3 fois le prix ailleurs. A woman, no, a storm in human form, was arguing with the clerk. Her dark hair was half falling out of its knot, her cheeks flushed with frustration. She stabbed a finger at a battered poetry collection in the glass case. Daniel's French was decent, but hers was molten, lyrical, furious. He caught the words édition originale and vol, theft. The clerk shrugged, unimpressed. Without thinking, Daniel stepped forward. Je peux aider? She whirled on him. Up close, her eyes weren't just brown. They were black coffee held to the light, gold flickering in the depths. Can you? She snapped in English, sizing him up. Do you have a time machine? A gun? Because this voleur is charging 200 euros for a book that was 50 at the stall by the Seine last week. Daniel almost laughed. Instead, he said, I have the same edition, at my flat. Her anger stuttered. You're lying. It's the 1923 bilingual printing. Cream cover, foxed pages. There's a wine stain on archaic torso of Apollo. Her lips parted. How? My tutor spilled a glass of burgundy on it while arguing about Nietzsche. A beat. Then she laughed, sharp, unguarded like glass breaking. Of course he did. She thrust out her hand. Sophia! Daniel. Her grip was warm, her fingertips ink-stained. Later, in his apartment, she cradled the book like it was a wounded bird. You're really just giving this to me? I've memorized most of it, he said. It wasn't a boast, just fact. Sophia flipped to the stained page and read aloud, her voice low. You must change your life. Daniel's breath caught. She looked up, eyes gleaming. Prove it. 3 a.m., Pont des Arts. They'd talked for hours. Sophia was a writer, half Greek, half mad, allergic to silence. She'd come to Paris on a whim after a breakup, not running away, just repositioning the narrative. Daniel told her about Hong Kong, about his father's steel factories, his mother's subtle tyranny. He didn't say, I've never disobeyed her, but Sophia heard it anyway. So, she said, lighting a cigarette, you're the prince of a dying empire, and you've been sent to collect your Western education before going home to marry some shipping heiress. Daniel winced. That's not wrong. Sophia blew smoke at the stars. How very Gatsby of you. Then softer. Do you want to go back? The truth sat between them, heavy as the Seine. Instead of answering, Daniel kissed her. Sophia tasted like nicotine and cheap wine. She bit his lip, hard enough to draw blood, and whispered, Change your life, Daniel. He should have listened. The return. Hong Kong, 6 weeks later. The humidity hit Daniel like a fist the moment he stepped out of the airport. It clung to his skin, thick with the scent of diesel and dried seafood from the nearby market stalls. He'd forgotten how loud Hong Kong was, the jackhammer rhythm of construction, the shriek of minibus brakes, the constant murmur of Cantonese bargaining. After Paris's muted grays and Sophia's laughter ringing through cobblestone alleys, it felt like being shoved into a cage. His mother's driver, Ah Lok, greeted him with a stiff nod. Welcome home, Siu Jie. The title, Young Master, made Daniel's jaw tighten. The Lau Estate, Peak Road. The house hadn't changed, marble floors cold underfoot. Jade figurines watching from glass cabinets, the oppressive click-click of his mother's heels as she descended the staircase, her qipao immaculate, her smile sharper than the diamonds at her throat. "Daniel," she kissed the air beside his cheek. "You're late." Jet lag gnawed at his skull. "My flight was on time." "I meant your life," she said, and turned toward the dining room. "We have guests." Dinner from hell. The Chens sat at the table like a tribunal. Mr. Chen, thick-necked and sweating through his tailored suit, owned half the container ships in the Pearl Delta. His wife smiled with all the warmth of a department store mannequin. And between them, Mei Ling, 23, polished as a porcelain doll, her nails painted shell pink to match her lipstick. She didn't look up when Daniel sat across from her. "Daniel," his father said, voice gravelly with the cough he'd been nursing for months. "Mei Ling graduated from London School of Economics. She plays piano." A pause, a script. Daniel forced his mouth to move. "What pieces?" Mei Ling's eyes flicked to him, darting, like a fish sensing a hook, before dropping again. "Debussy, Clair de Lune." Sophia had played the same piece on a battered upright in her apartment, barefoot and laughing when she messed up the arpeggios. "How lovely," Daniel's mother purred. "You'll play for us after dessert." The unspoken words hung over the table like smoke. This is happening. Midnight, the study. Daniel found his father bent over ledgers, the ashtray overflowing. "You knew." His father didn't deny it. "The Chen's shipping lanes saved us during the 008 crash. Without them..." A shrug. "You understand numbers, Bill. This is just another merger." Daniel. He hadn't called him that since childhood. "I'm not a spreadsheet," Daniel said, voice cracking. His father lit another cigarette. "No, you're a Lao." 3 a.m., locked in his room. Sophia's last text glowed on his phone. "Did you land safe?" He typed, deleted, typed again. "I have to tell you something." His mother's voice slithered through his memory. "Dr. Wong says stress could stop your father's heart. Do you really want to be holding his coffin handles next to your foreign whore?" The cursor blinked. Daniel erased the message. The engagement photo. 2 weeks later, a photographer posed them on the terrace. Mei Ling's hand was a dead weight on Daniel's arm. "Closer," the cameraman urged. Mei Ling leaned in, her perfume choking him, orchids and something chemical underneath. Click. That night, Daniel dreamt of Sophia standing in the rain, watching him through the lens. When he woke, his pillow was wet. The silence. Paris, 2 months later. Sophia sat cross-legged on her apartment floor, surrounded by a graveyard of unsent letters. Her phone buzzed again, with a notification from Le Monde. The article's headline glared up at her. Lao-Chen alliance finalized. Hong Kong shipping empire secures future. Below it, a photograph of Daniel in a tailored suit, his arm around a woman whose smile didn't reach her eyes. Sophia hurled her phone across the room. It hit the wall with a satisfying crack. 3 weeks earlier, the first time Daniel missed their scheduled call, Sophia told herself it was fine. He's busy. His father's sick. The time difference is brutal. But then his text grew shorter. "Can't talk tonight. Work. Sorry." She started drinking. Cheap red wine, the kind they used to share, staining her lips like dried blood. Her roommate Claire watched her from the doorway one night. "He's ghosting you." "No," Sophia snapped. "He's just..." "What? Occupied?" Claire held up Sophia's own laptop, where Daniel's Instagram showed a blurry cocktail party, his mother's claw-like grip on his shoulder. "Wake up, Cherie. He's not coming back." The breaking point. Sophia booked the flight to Hong Kong on a whim. No, not a whim. A challenge. If Daniel wouldn't answer her calls, she'd force him to look her in the eye and say it to her face. It's over. She packed the Rilke book he'd given her, its pages dog-eared at, "You must change your life." Hong Kong, the engagement party. The Grand Hyatt ballroom glittered like a gilded cage. Sophia stood in the doorway, underdressed in her travel-wrinkled dress, her hair still damp from the shower. She'd come straight from the airport, fueled by fury and 3 espresso shots. And then she saw him, Daniel, in a tuxedo, holding a champagne flute like it was a prop. Beside him, the woman from the photos, Mei Ling, wore a dress the color of a bruise. Someone made a toast. Daniel laughed, a hollow sound Sophia had never heard before. Her knees buckled. The pier. He found her by the harbor, gripping the railing so hard her knuckles blanched. "Sophia, how long?" Her voice was eerily calm. Daniel flinched. "It's not what you think." "Really?" She whipped around, eyes blazing. "Because it looks like you're engaged, Daniel. It looks like you've been lying to me for months." The wind off the water carried the scent of salt and diesel. Daniel reached for her. "I was going to tell you." "When?" The scream tore out of her, raw and guttural. "On your wedding night? Or were you just going to vanish, like I was some dirty secret?" A crowd was gathering. Daniel's face drained of color. "Please, let's go somewhere." Sophia yanked the Rilke book from her bag. "You know what this is? Proof." She hurled it into the harbor. "That's how much your promises are worth." Daniel's breath hitched. "Sophia, I love you." "No." She stepped back, shaking. "Love doesn't cower. Love doesn't hide." She turned and walked away. Daniel didn't follow. The letter, unsent. Back in Paris, Sophia sat at her typewriter, fingers trembling. "Dear Daniel, I would have fought for you. I would have burned cities to the ground. But you didn't even give me the chance. I hope she makes you happy. I hope you think of me every time you lie to her too. Goodbye, Sophia." She crumpled the page and lit it with a match. The aftermath. 6 months later, Hong Kong. The wedding photos arrived in a leather-bound album. Daniel flipped through them mechanically. Mei Ling in white lace, himself in a black suit, their hands clasped like strangers forced to share a lifeboat. His mother had insisted on traditional Keto ceremonies, the tea pouring, the red envelopes. Every bow to the elders had felt like a nail in his coffin. He closed the album. Outside, the neon glow of Hong Kong pulsed like an open wound. Midnight. The study. Daniel poured whiskey into a tumbler, his third of the night. The burn in his throat was the only thing that felt real anymore. His father's old desk was littered with paperwork, shipping contracts, merger clauses, the endless machinery of the Lao Empire. Buried beneath it all was a single crumpled boarding pass. Paris, Hong Kong, 14 May. Sophia's flight, the day she'd come for him. A knock at the door. Mei Ling stood there, her silk robe cinched tight. "You're drinking again." "I'm working." She stepped inside, her gaze flickering to the boarding pass. A beat of silence. Then softly, "Do you still think about her?" Daniel's grip tightened around the glass. "No." Mei Ling smiled, a sad, knowing thing. Liar. The funeral. Daniel's father died on a Tuesday. The doctors called it cardiac arrest, but Daniel knew the truth. The old man had willed himself to die just to escape his wife's voice. At the funeral, his mother wore black lace and didn't shed a tear. "Now you're the head of the family," she whispered, gripping Daniel's arm. "Act like it." Across the room, Mei Ling watched him, her eyes dark with something like pity. 1 year later. The bedroom. Daniel woke to an empty bed. He found Mei Ling on the balcony, smoking a cigarette she'd stolen from his pack. "I want a divorce," she said, without turning around. The words should have shocked him. Instead, he felt nothing. "Why? Why are you doing this?" She laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. Because you're a coward, and I refuse to drown with you. And I'm tired of being your alibi. She exhaled smoke into the dawn light. You've been dead for a year, Daniel. I won't be your widow while you're still breathing. The box. Mei Ling left him 3 things: the divorce papers, signed in elegant script, a plane ticket to Paris, one way, a note, go before it's too late. Daniel stared at them for hours, then he booked a flight. Paris. Charles de Gaulle. Airport. Daniel stepped off the plane into a city that no longer belonged to him. The air smelled different now, not of Sophia's jasmine perfume and cigarette smoke, but of rain and strangers. He hadn't slept in 36 hours. His carry-on held nothing but a change of clothes, his passport, and the address he'd pried from Sophia's old landlord after 3 bottles of wine and 500 euros in cash. She moved out last year, the man had said, shrugging, left no forwarding address. But check Rue de la Verrerie, she liked the cafe there. Daniel's hands shook as he hailed a taxi. Rue de la Verrerie. Late afternoon. The cafe was tiny, the kind of place Sophia would have loved. Chipped mosaic tables, an ancient espresso machine hissing like a scorned lover. Daniel ordered a coffee he didn't drink and asked the barista, "Do you know Sophia? Greek, writer, always scribbling in notebooks?" The barista's eyes flickered. "Oui, she hasn't come in months." "Where is she now?" A pause, then quietly, "You should talk to Claude, the bookseller next door." Librairie de l'Oubli, the bookstore of forgetting. Claude was an old man with ink-stained fingers. He took one look at Daniel and said, "You're him, the one from Hong Kong." Daniel's stomach dropped. "She talked about me?" "Only once." Claude reached under the counter and pulled out a package wrapped in brown paper. "She left this for you. Said if a sad-eyed Asian man ever came asking, to give it to him." Daniel's name was scrawled on the front in Sophia's handwriting. The paper crinkled like a dying breath as he tore it open. Inside, a first edition Rilke collection, the same one they'd fought over in the beginning. A stack of letters, all the ones Daniel had sent her, unopened. A single sheet of paper, with 2 lines. "You came too late. I loved you anyway." Daniel's vision blurred. Where is she? Claude wouldn't meet his eyes. Père Lachaise, plot 87. Père Lachaise Cemetery, dusk. The grave was fresh enough that the earth still looked raw. Sophia Carolis, 1992-2023. You must change your life. Daniel collapsed to his knees. The dates punched the air from his lungs. She'd died 3 weeks ago. A car accident, Claude had said. Rain-slick roads, a swerving truck. No pain, they claimed, but Daniel knew better. Sophia had spent her last year in pain, and he'd caused it. He pressed his forehead to the cold stone and screamed until his voice cracked. Later, her apartment building. The new tenant let him in out of pity. "She lived here?" Daniel choked out. The girl nodded. "I found some things under the floorboards when I moved in. Was going to throw them out, but..." She handed him a shoebox. Inside, a dried sprig of lavender, from the bouquet he'd brought her on their 3rd date. A playlist titled, "For When You're Gone," every song they'd ever danced to. A pregnancy test, positive. Daniel vomited in the sink. The note, he wrote, but never leaves. "Sophia, I would say I'm sorry, but we both know that's not enough. I would say I loved you, but you already knew that. So instead, I'll say this. I should have fought for you. I should have burned my life down for you. I should have been brave. Now I'll spend the rest of my life knowing our child died with you, and that's my punishment." D. He burned it with her favorite lighter, letting the ashes fall onto her grave. A man bound by filial duty sacrifices his great love to obey his family's demands, only to discover too late that his obedience cost him not only his happiness, but his one chance at redemption. Daniel's failure to be honest with Sophia is the fatal flaw that destroys everything. His obedience doesn't just cost him love, it costs him his future, his child, and any chance of redemption. The oceans separate them physically, but it is obedience that truly creates an uncrossable sea between them. If this story of love and loss resonated with you, perhaps you'll find more echoes in these other tales. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories that explore the deepest corners of the heart.